Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. It's good to see you. You've seen the title, so at this stage you know more about today's reading than I do, since I speak to you from the recent alternate past. This is a general, timeless one, ideally designed for quite a large audience, so we won't get as specific as we would in a private booking, link down below. If most of what I'm saying feels like an answer to a question you've been living, take those tidbits with you and let a fellow traveller excavate the rest. If it's not your reading, there are playlists on my channel hub to randomise finding something else. Whilst it's true that a broken clock is right twice a day, I'm not sure that same clock is right 10 times within the hour. So trust yourself, above all, to know what's useful for you and what makes you feel more empowered for hearing it, no matter what your beliefs. While we're on beliefs, on this channel gendered terms are just a specificity of language to describe energetic tendencies and signatures, solar or lunar inclination in accordance with a hermetic law of polarity, and not any kind of socialisation to buy into wholesale or conflate with the identity or orientation of anyone described. Romantic and spiritual labels used are plucked from lengthy precedent predating any unfortunate trending controversies or engineered cyclical backlash. My dude, around these parts, we don't relinquish the complexity of our full histories. We trust ourselves cognitively to adapt what we consume and see what's healthy and long-term accurate. I'm legally obliged to say this is entertainment in quote marks and that I'm an occultist not qualified in unrelated disciplines to advise on physical and mental health, finances, legalities. You get the picture, you're in charge of you. All my readings are protected and warded by frankly magnificent beneficial forces, though I don't share my custom prep rituals on camera any more than I give out my address. I hope the reasoning behind that is obvious, but you can trust there are zero parasitic or adversarial influences permitted within 100 unseen paces of any signal we patch from the noise here today. So sit back, relax into the shape of your most luminous possible future self, cozy up to imaginal allies, and take in whatever it is you need to hear. If you do like it, this small channel with a big mission very much appreciates subscriptions, thoughtful comments, or donations in order to spread the word and keep the lights on. Now, let's tune that dial. When I look on your eyes, then I find that I'll do fine. When I look on your eyes, then I'll do better. I've had that bit in my head all day. And in case you didn't translate from my terrible singing, sorry, slightly sore throat still. When I look on your eyes, I find that I'll do fine. When I look on your eyes, then I'll do better. I don't like to estimate what this is about so early in, but having taken a look at the cards and having had some very specific messages today in my own life, I would think that we're looking at a new parent. It may be a fur baby, or it may be a real child. I say real, that makes it sound like any other species is less real, sorry. That was very speciesist of me, but you get what I mean. It may be a pet or it may be a human baby that is involved in this. And when I say baby, we're talking any age from 0 to 21, possibly 23 if you believe about brain development. But I think that if this is your reading, I am very likely speaking to the caretaker of a youngling. And I use the word youngling rather than saying that this is your child, partly because we were pulled towards using the Mandalorian deck today. And you'll notice we don't have the Mando characters that are kind of the most famous in this deck, but we do have two Trickster or Joker energies, and we'll get more into that. Why do I think it's a parent-child reading? Well, firstly, that song that's been looping around my head all day for you rather than for me is a song from my childhood, but I only remembered fractions of it, so I had to look it up. I remember it on Virgin Radio in the late 90s, if anyone else remembers that station. It was rad, I miss it. It was kind of indie before indie was cardigans and accents. Amazing. Anyway, I can't recall the name of the song or the band. I will link them down below if I do know. Or if you're quicker than me and you do know, please comment. But essentially, I'm harking back to childhood with that one. And then we've got the combination of that with a deck that tells childhood folk tales, as in the Tarot of the Divine, which you can book within my shop. And then we've got this star card of the child with her lamb. Now I can't remember which tale this is, but just that image to me is very childlike, very peaceful. I'm being pulled to sit on the ground, so as with the last reading, some of you may need grounding or to return to kind of earthiness or time with nature, or even time with Attenborough if time with nature isn't possible for you at the moment. We also have a card which is about family, legacy, monetary things, all sorts of stuff here. But in this deck, again, it's very family centered. And you can see, for those of you for whom we're speaking about a fur baby, we also feature a dog in the kind of child role. I think that when you look into the eyes of this being that you are caretaking, you find that you'll be fine. When you look into its eyes, you will do better. However, I think if you're here, it's because there's some kind of, not an obstacle to you doing better or being a good caretaker or being a good guardian, shall we say, but because there's some kind of niggling doubt that's coming from the outside. And I think this is a bit of a reassurance reading. So we have Aquarius in the reverse with I know, or in this case, I don't know. And we've got the number 23 in the flippity-dippity. Now, those of you tinfoilers out there, you know that the number 23 is quite significant and not always in a pleasant way. In fact, if one particular friend is watching and sees the number 23, I imagine he will click off before you do. Hiya, love you. 23 has a really dodgy reputation, hence the movie, but the reputation has been going around a lot longer for weird things happening, for not so great uncanny things surrounding that number. I don't carry any such superstition, but I acknowledge it in this reading in its reverse aspect, meaning that there is something here as well about a blessing, something unexpected and fortuitous, perhaps an unexpected child, an unexpected fur baby, scale baby, or other. Please specify in the comments. There's something here that is more broadly a blessing. And when I think of Mando, as many of you will, I also think of similar samurai movies that it was inspired by, where a person happens upon a child and has to escort it as a protector to somewhere else, and that journey becomes something very important to them. Now, when I was channeling the song, I thought it might be a love reading in the sort of relationship, romantic sense, right? And I couldn't figure out how that related to these cards without sitting with them more deeply. And spoiler for the kind of extra divination session we're going to do later, but part of the component we're using is little cards with words on. And the card that I picked out to give me a clue was Journey. Some of you will remember this from the J is for readings in my A to Z Lucky Dip playlist. If you haven't checked that out, this is your cue, right? I can't even remember what that reading was about now, but it was J is for Journey as my cue here, and that made me think of the Mandalorian journey, of the guardianship of the child, of that relationship between protector and special gift. And special gift definitely is a 23 in reverse. But with this sense of I know in reverse, it's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to take care of it. Now in your colour readings, we'll get to green, blue, neon, but we've got rose gold here, and this instantly makes me think associatively of millennials, and then it makes me think of an entire generation of people who are saying, I don't know how to do it this way. Namely, a generation who, because of the actions of the previous couple of generations, maybe missing out Gen Xers because they didn't actually do this, it was more the boomers, but millennials are set up in a very specific way. And, you know, we laugh about millennials going on about adulting and all of this sort of stuff, but realistically, they were the first generation for whom the climate was, you know, a million times different to people maybe 2 generations before them. If you think of like the climate for purchasing a house, starting a family, etc., in the 80s, and then you compare that to people in their 30s now, which is largely the kind of millennial group, then you can see that opportunities are restricted, markets are very different, ways of going about jobs are changing all the time. And for many of those millennials, I say we because I am one, would argue that things are not set up for us in the same way. We cannot have the ideal Steve Martin house in the suburbs without working so much that we never enjoy it. We cannot just get on the ladder in the same way, career-wise, housing-wise, education-wise, any of these things. Now, this isn't a money reading, but the reason that I say these things is because rose gold makes me think of the sort of readjustment with those climates back into a form of individualism and potentially harmful consumerism that is the mark of the millennial, which irritates both the older and the younger generations from it. There is something here about, I know what you did. I know how families used to work. I know how raising a child or a pet or another being used to work and operate. I can't do it that way. And the people around me do not understand that I can't do it that way, right? So this may be you speaking about the differences between you and previous or subsequent generations, or this may just be kind of a vibe of somebody in this Mandalorian caretaking role who for some reason can't operate like everybody else used to. And because this is a broad general reading, see the introduction, this can be on a spectrum between I need to take my dog to the vet, but I can't fund it the same way as my great-grandpappy might have, all the way over to I have 6 kids and I don't know how to feed them because the opportunities are different for us millennials and things have taken an unexpected turn. All of those different things on that spectrum are valid, and I don't want to be too compet and I don't want to be too prescriptive about a nuclear family, so you do you in this reading. But I'm going to kind of broadly refer to something as the child and know that that thing can be an adoptive child, an adopted sibling, somebody you're in a caregiver role for that you didn't ask to be in. It can be a literal child of yours. It can be a pet. It can be, whatever that you are taking care of. And the sort of marker of what it will be is that without you, it might not be able to sustain in the same way. So even if we're talking about, say, dependents that have already moved out, we're still speaking about them being maybe emotionally dependent or maybe financially every so often, or there's some kind of reliance on you as a recipient for this reading of this being, of this, the child that I'm going to say. In fact, I may even start calling it Grogu because it's just easier to refer to, right? Maybe we'll get Grogu out later if I remember. But yeah, so there's some kind of feeling here that you have a job to do in terms of taking care of the child, and that things are not set up for you the way that they would be for other people perhaps doing this thing, either in time or just within your particular class system or particular country or whatever. Let me know in the comments where you hail from, by the way, I'd love to know. And with this Aquarius reversed, it's sort of, I don't know the answers. Bear in mind as well that Aquarius is in joint rulership between Uranus and Saturn. So it has this restrictive, disciplinary kind of force that sets very good boundaries, but it also kind of has an air of wild unpredictability and Jarmushian outsiderness with it. So there is a combination here between laying down the law or living in a very boundaried or very disciplined, very ordered way in order to carry something off, versus having that spirit of revolution or surprise or having sudden events coming in and kind of shoving what your plans were out of the way, that puts this Aquarius in the flip. And with Aquarius as well, we've got air again down here in quite a significant way. So I dare say that there is an involvement of articulation of needs in this, or of language. Perhaps a child or a recipient of your care that is unable to articulate its needs very effectively or at all. One of my readings in my shop may be good for that, but no pressure. I know many of you come to free because you can't afford it, and that's fine. The other thing here is that the people kind of, how do I want to put this? The people weighing in on this situation, which we'll get into, are perhaps very articulate, very logical people who express themselves very well, particularly with each other, right? In a network which you are kind of a part of, but you might not feel that you have that same freedom of expression within. You may also resonate a bit back, I think it's 2 or 3 readings back, with the reading that we had about persuasion and a gift, and kind of not being gaslit by circumstance. There's something to do with that in the title. You'll find it. It's around the same time as this comes out. But there's something here about influence, and in this case I think the influence is on you. The strange thing about this is that with this sense of gift, and with the sudden knowing after not knowing, and with a sudden sense of direction after having none, the lyrics of the song really fit, because it's not, I look into your eyes and I know we'll be fine, or I assert that we always would have been fine. It's, I find that I'll do fine. When I look on your eyes, then I'll do better, right? So there's something here about like logic brain taking over with how other people are telling you you should parent or care or nourish or be, that when you look into the eyes of the person or creature that you're actually caregiving for, that you actually have the one-on-one direct relationship with, you find suddenly that you have the resources. It sort of hits you almost out of the blue. Now I'm hearing You Came From Out of Nowhere, the Faith No More song. And it's very much that like, oh, I get it now, right? It's very fitting with this star, because your inclination of how to do this thing is coming from the instinctive. Sorry about that, guys. That was just an alarm to say I need to take a quick break to do something, but I'm going to finish my sentence. So yeah, looking into the eyes of this creature or person or whatever, there is an instinctive incoming message of this is how you do it, almost kind of from the higher self of that being. Whereas what you've been leading with perhaps is this very logical, very systematic, very Saturnian input from those around you. And for the vast majority of you, I think that we're speaking about family because of this group here and the story and the 10 of coins being about interrelatedness. So even if the child, in inverted commas, in your charge is not actually a familial figure, I think that it's family who are weighing in on how to do this. And particularly for those of you who are a first-time pet collaborator, I don't want to say owner, or a first-time parent, right? This is going to weigh heavy, because it's very much like, well, in my day we did things like this, or you are a bad XYZ if you think to do it this other way when we did it like this, or we will do it like this. Because also bear in mind that some of these voices weighing in are the voices of children, right? There may even be someone younger than you telling you how to live, and you're coming in with this rose gold energy saying, it's different for people specifically in my bracket, right? Whether that's age bracket, tax bracket, location, gender, any of it, right? It's very, they don't understand, not only because they're slightly younger or older, but because you are in a unique position by virtue of those same things. Okay, there'll be a quick cut and then I'll be back. There is also a possibility in this that if this is not a caregiving reading and you instead came for a love reading, or you're thinking of doing something for a friend or proposing something to a lover or whatever else in terms of you kind of nourishing another person in a way that isn't this like parent-child dynamic, shall we say, then there's something here about the way that you are going to do that coming into question. And again, it's really hitting home for that other reading about a persuasive person. It's got a little emoji spider, and it was out maybe 2 readings ago, maybe 3. But there's definitely something about others weighing in on how it is that you should do this, and that kind of psyching you out quite a bit. And the way to return to how it should be done is actually not to make a plan, not to make a strategy, not to invoke Saturn, but to do the more Uranian thing and just turn up for that person. Just be there, look them in the eyes, and then you'll know what to do. And that can be a really difficult journey for those of us who are not made in that words. Even I'm having trouble with it, see? This is the sort of thing that really scares me too. It can be a very difficult journey for those who are used to being hypervigilant, perhaps, in our relationships, so as to protect from harm that was done to us prior. Not necessarily with that person, but in general, right? And who need to lean into the more instinctive side of how to relate to somebody. It makes me think of like the difference in sexual relationships between having a script that feels like a corno, sorry, I can't say it on YouTube, versus having true intimacy. True intimacy is where you can have spontaneity, it's where you can use surprise, it's where you can be romantic, it's where you actually connect, right? Whereas making all the right moves in a planned way can sometimes just feel like you're reading it off a script, or you're enacting something sort of bigger than both of you for reasons that are unclear to both, and you're sort of checked out of the situation. I didn't think this was going to come up when I was reading it, but taking a break earlier between reading sessions, I was browsing Reddit and I found a post from somebody who was debating whether or not to either have a conversation with their partner, or in the extreme version, leave them, because aftercare was such a non-existent thing in their sexual relationship, right? And there were lots of commenters very helpfully saying, you know, aftercare is actually part of the act, right? If this person can't meet your intimacy needs in terms of knowing the nourishment that you need before and after sex, and not just the act of, then there is an incompatibility there, which either needs discussion or needs you to say, hey, you're not doing the part that really works for me, right? And there is a sense of that with this, even if it's nothing to do with relationships. There's like there's a sense that going through the instinctive route of what to do, moment to moment, is going to have more utility to this particular situation than getting the advice of everybody who wants to weigh in. Particularly because the people who want to weigh in are in air, logic, step-by-step Saturnian energy, but are also, in these cards, in trickster, untrustworthy energy, right? The shadow trickster. I'm going to show you, but these particular characters in Mando are not the nicest of the bunch, right? I believe we've had them in a different reading, so that may be an extra synchronicity for you. But to me, I'm not really wanting them on my ship if I'm taking care of a young child, or indeed a Grogu. I forget the name of his race, but, you know, a mini Yoda. So there's something here about that, and there's something about the vulnerability that it would take you to be able to look into something's eyes and know how to respond to it in a more immediate, trusting in self way, rather than trusting in the lived experiences of other people, or deferring to their apparent knowledge, or kind of going with convention on what the next step is for this. So if you've had a lot of people in your friends or family tell you how to do this, whether you're a caretaker for a child, a person, an animal, or a lover, my instinct is that your instinct has been absent. You've replaced your innate gut feeling with, how do I do this right though? And this idea of it being correct or not correct is a bit risky anyway, because situations change and differ and are contextual and are circumstantial. But particularly when we have this rose gold here, it's like, are you really going to base how you relate on a really deep, intimate level with another being in this incarnation, right, as a reflection of what someone else has said, right? Because rose gold is metallic, so it's reflecting back to other people what they're emitting, what they wish to see. If you think of a metallic bag, right, and you take it in a room with green lighting, the rose gold is going to somewhat reflect green. If you take it in a room with blue lighting, it's going to somewhat reflect blue. and therefore your innate selfness may be rose gold, which has its own set of meanings, but what you're responding to here is very much wishing to reflect what other people think, say, do. And it's not working out for you, or at least it's not causing damage, but it's not advised for you by spirit. Excuse me, I'm being interrupted by a pigeon telling me he hasn't been fed when I've put food out twice today, son. You are late. There may be an issue here to do with these people and your punctuality or your other commitments, and why it is that you can't make more time for them, or you can't do things on their precise schedule rather than yours. You may feel that the way your life is set up, things happen at a certain hour and that works for everybody concerned. You know, hint, hint, mate, like putting the food out for the birds. And they may turn up, 10 hours early or late and say, why is it that you haven't accommodated our needs? That's just for some of you, but he's really making stink eye contact at me, so I think that's it. For others of you, this is a bird that we're sort of vaguely taking care of here. You know what? He's brought his mate. That is this energy. Like, oh, I can't convince her. I'll just bring a friend and we'll both hound her. They'll start pecking on the window in a minute. Anyway, sorry. Distraction. But like I say, it is this kind of... I think these people mean well. I think they're very grateful for your presence in their life, right? The pigeons enjoy me feeding them. That's why they turn up. They're very grateful for the food I put out. They enjoy the reciprocity of our relationship. They give me something, I give them something. And I think it's the same with whoever these people, are to you. Confirmation, because I'm hiccuping. But at the same time, I think that what they see as giving you is an abundance of instruction. And you may either have outgrown the age where you would take such an instruction, or you may find that their instructive capacity no longer meets the needs of your wildly unpredictable situation. I mean, again, think of Mandalorian, right? Nobody saw any of that. I mean, we saw bits of the plot coming, but nobody saw that setup coming. Even within the Star Wars universe, it wasn't particularly anticipated. So this is something that's kind of come in for you, perhaps unexpected, perhaps unplanned, perhaps just fabulously planned but spontaneous in terms of when you do it. You do you. Again, reading for a lot of people. But there's something here about that aspect of the situation that makes these people feel like they have to storm in and take over. It's like, oh, well, you're totally unprepared for this, so let me just dither. Let me just commandeer, etc. Now, the bell. I think am I okay? Yeah. I'm okay saying that this belonged to my grandparents. It's a kind of surviving relic from their house. And the dynamic of my grandparents, which I think I'm also okay saying now, is that my grandfather was very quiet, very gentle, very good with animals. He reminds me of this star card a lot, or vice versa, should I say. Whereas my grandma was wonderful. I loved her. I absolutely adored her. But she was a real matriarch, and that is the nicest word that we can use for that. She believed very firmly, with such strong Capricorn, that she knew the correct way to go about things. And for some of the family members more than others, that was an extremely restrictive presence and exchange in their lives when they decided to make their own way, in a way that perhaps wasn't correct for her generation or for her personal beliefs on absolutely everything, right? The joke that used to be made between two friends and family members who were both fans of The Shining is, she was here to correct you, sir. She's always been here. It's kind of, it's got that vibe of like, it just tips over into slightly sinister. And I feel I can say that because she was many other things. She was absolutely wonderful. She was maybe the strongest person I've ever known. She was delightfully caring to me specifically. I was golden grandchild, and she taught me a great deal, without which I wouldn't be specifically here using this deck. But, it giveth and it taketh away. And she was here kind of with the hand on the shoulder of not even younger family members, just all family members, giving solid advice. And what I'm seeing in my head is that meme with the Finding Nemo logo that says, "Finding where I asked," right? It was very good advice up until a certain age, and then we just wanted to be adults, or to do our own thing, or indeed to date who we were in love with, or change our hair colours, or any number of things that she had beef with. What's that line? There was a really great song about having beef that came through earlier, and I think it must have been a channeled, and now I can't remember it. I think it was in a Fiddler song. I'll put it down below if I remember what it is. But it was very confrontational, and I think that whoever this is, whether they're a matriarch, whether they're older, whether they're not, the primary person weighing in and perhaps influencing other people's chatter about this, because chatter is very dominant here, their energy is from a place of benevolence, but it can come across in a confrontational fashion, particularly when it actually doesn't apply to the situation at hand, and a different approach is needed for a different time, or a different set of people, or even just a different objective at the end of it. Perhaps you don't want to be the kind of parent or grandparent or even child that this person is and suggests you would be. And for a small minority of you, and I really want to add, this isn't my grandma coming in for this bit, because I want to respect her wonderful energy and continue working with her. But for a small number, the phrase that I'm hearing from Spirit is, every child deserves a parent, not every parent deserves a child. I know it's confrontational. I know some of you will hiss and come off the channel, but I find it to be a truth, right? And some caretakers are better than others, and it seems to be some kind of strange and uncanny rule that often those who are not the best have the most to say about what other people should be doing. So that might resonate. Okay, moving into the star. I believe this is the description of you with your being, I want to say, because again, it's not specifically a child. It could just be someone you wish to nourish or wish to give to. And there is a sense of them falling asleep in the safety of your arms in some way, but also you looking to this star, this intuitive guidance. The seven sisters here, the Pleiades, making me think of the mothers of my mothers, so maybe even looking for ancestral guidance or spirit guidance, and you kind of meditating on that idea while they're in a slumber, while they're in a break. For some of you, this is like you've been up all night on duty trying to get them to sleep, or trying to breastfeed or something like that, and you're just taking a quick moment to meditate and be like, I don't know how to deal with this, can you advise? And my feeling is that actually this signal will come through a little clearer than if you were to call any one of these people that have been advising. In this moment, you may also experience some of these messages, so let's move down here before we continue with tarot. We've got your everything I've ever asked for. I think this is reciprocal between you and this figure, whoever they are. And then remember the first time we met, I keep thinking about it. So if this is a person that you're in love with, that hits very literally, right? Because this is from my love deck, but it can be taken other ways. If this is your child, then this is, remember the first time you gazed at me. Again, when I look in your eyes, I realise I'll be fine, right? Or I find that I'll be fine. If it's an animal, I think that the way that you came across this animal or adopted it or something like that had a little bit of a Jupiterian or a synchronistus element to it. And it was very much like, remember the first time we locked eyes. It makes me think of when I was very young and someone around me adopted a cat because the cat just kind of toddled straight over and was like, in kitten form, was like, you're my owner, you're my caregiver. Let's not use owner, shall we? And there is a sort of acknowledgement amongst pet owners, pet caregivers, that the pet chooses you in some ways, right? Particularly when that situation is kind of optional. Please adopt, don't shop. That's all I'm going to say on that. But anyway. And then, truthfully, I am who I am because of you. I think, that, again, this is a mutuality. But it's also an acknowledgement from you that the growth in this situation is very much mutual. Whatever stage of development this other person is at, however you've seen them get bigger and stronger and learn to crawl, in whatever way, you know, metaphorically or otherwise, they have taught you as much as you've taught them, right? That you've done as much growing in your connection with this other being as they have with you. And I think that's part of the soul contract. And I think that those of you aware of what a soul contract is, which many of you on a tarot channel, that's why you tune into the stars or tune into higher guidance or even your own intuition over this other stuff, because you have this acknowledgement that this is a soul connection. When I say that, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. Guys, each of us have lots of soulmates over the course of our lives. They are often people we recognise at first sight or have strange sensations around when we come across them, or who are kind of meant to be there for us in some way. And we may only see them across a room, you know, 5-10 years earlier than they become truly significant to us. But chances are, if we've had that weird feeling, they will become really crucial and become a kind of blessing, even if it's through a curse, right? Even if the thing that they bring into your life is more of a lesson than it is a beneficial experience. I was actually discussing this with my closest friend the other day, how there are two figures in my life that I kind of saw at a distance and went, you're significant, I should talk to you. One of them I saw many years earlier, and they became a romantic partner years later, and are now, you know, one of the key figures in my development overall, and have been a catalyst for so many of the things that have happened in my life, or even catalyzing things have happened while I've been around them, just peripherally. Like I'll have been at their function or at their house and something major has gone down, and it's like, that's that weird relationship again. And then the other one is a figure that equally I saw from a distance and went, I should talk to them. And actually they became the reason my inappropriate relationship elsewhere broke down. They became a reason that I had frequent panic attacks. They ended up assaulting me in my home. They ended up causing so much stress to my family at the time that I ended up having a stroke and going a quarter blind. I still maintain that that is because we had a soul contract. So I see this person who I still hate as a soulmate, right? I mean, I don't literally see them, and hopefully court would be involved if they took a step near me, but you see what I mean about this kind of fatedness. It's easily recognised, even if the form that it takes is very different. And I think that that's why that example is coming through, is that yes, it's easy to see your soul contract with this small being, let's call them, even if they're not small. What's harder sometimes is to see your soul contract with the person weighing in on all of this. That indeed they are doing their spiritual job also, and you to them, right? There is an equal exchange and agreement between you guys as well, that one will push and prod and poke the other into developing firmer boundaries, or into being out on their own so much that they develop a survival sense that they didn't have prior. So there's food for thought in that already. And I think actually that this is something you may pass on verbally or energetically in some way to this thing in your care, this child, in the sense that like all connections are significant, or now I realise the significance of this other person who was potentially a tyrant, I hate the word, but a karmic, an abuser, someone hypercritical of your existence in a harmful way, etc., etc. These bonds are equally sacred, but the difference is that with the ones that rub us up the wrong way, we can't tune into our intuitive self by looking into their faces to know what to do next, because their job is to shunt us back into the logical. It's to put us in a place where we question everything from a very kind of rumination-centered, mind-based place, rather than from the heart center, from the solar plexus, from the third eye, and from a kind of knowing of like, I have a feeling that if I do this, it will work very deeply. So really, you've been presented with two different kinds of people or things to learn two different skills. And as much as these people may be really aggravating right now, and as much as I do want to validate that you are good at this role of being this Mandalorian to this child, I actually think everybody's here for a purpose. You know, even the minor characters, even the villains, are written into your story for good reason and will be something you can look back on with great enjoyment, right? Or with a deeper understanding of who you are. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm saying that from a position of privilege, because let's remember that this soulmate too, if you like, was somebody who was the reason I had a major stroke and lost my career and my sight and my relationship, which I was then attached to, even if, you know, actually that was for the best, etc. Actually, they were the reason I lost a position as a step-parent as well. So technically lost 2 children. So these things can be very, very, not even just triggering, but absolutely life devastating sometimes, but they are there for a purpose. So I want to put this group or this person's critique of you into a wider context so that you're able to distance and go, okay, but what is this teaching me? Or what is it that we might mutually teach each other in some way? Or why is it that I've entered into a time and place where I have, for instance, a hypercritical parent or a student body that are incredibly unruly and teach me how to live, or I don't know, a friendship group that are advising against the one thing that I know is correct for me, etc., etc. So you are who you are because of you in a mutual way with all parties. Then we've got this sort of strange outlier. Where's the friendship in this friends with benefits situation? This came out separately and last, but I do think it's part of this. A couple of interpretations, so please bear with, because again, you're in for a general reading, and if you want to get really specific, the best thing to do is book with me. For some of you, there is a child involved here, but it's come out of a situation which was a friends with benefits, or which was less committed than people would normally be if they were to birth a child, ideally, right? You take where that is on your kind of love and lust spectrum, but let's say it wasn't as cemented as you would have liked to have been before you were taking care of another being, or before you were even involving maybe like a younger family member who you are both then responsible for, or something like that. In that sense, it refers to the fact that maybe there wasn't actually a reciprocal friendship before this connection that you had, I won't say escalated, but became a third thing in the form of this child or pet or sibling or whatever it is. So your baby daddy or baby mama or whatever may be somebody that you didn't feel you had a firm enough reciprocal foundation with before this began, and that is why you're feeling outsourced and like you don't know how to do this. It is also something that other people can see, which is why family, friends, etc., anybody with their own idea about how to do it is weighing in. But actually, I think that just because something happens from that position doesn't mean it's always a mistake. Very small number of you, if you are instead resonating with the narrative about offering something to a lover or wanting to be more intimate with them and not knowing how to do it, so going around for advice, and then looking into their eyes and knowing how to do it, one of the consequences for looking into their eyes and knowing how to do it could be, not to be too compare, but that one of you gets pregnant, okay? So be mindful of that, be extra careful if needed, or if that's the desired outcome for you, you do you, boo. Congratulations, right? But just for some. The other way to take this, in a completely non-relationship, non-romantic sense, where we're talking about you in a caregiving position and perhaps family, friends, etc. weighing in, is that there is something about this situation which lacks a basic foundational care from which to provide an assessment. So again, we're echoing this message about not every parent deserves to be a parent. Or we're saying, if these are your friends, or even your friends with benefits, kind of weighing in on something in particular, make sure that the friendship is exactly where you would need it to be before you accept advice that is being offered by somebody who may not even know how to take care of you as a buddy, as a fellow family member, etc., before they advise you on how to take care of something else, right? There's again, it speaks to that situation with the Reddit example of the kind of aftercare vibe of like, are you seeing my needs to meet them? Are you seeing me at all kind of energy? But it's also like there's something... The example I'm getting is that if you're being kind of bossed around by family regarding how to raise something, then ask yourself the extent to which they have been family for you, right? Or ask yourself the extent to which you trust them as reliable people, as Ten of Pentacles kind of legacy figures who you would look up to, who you would emulate. And if you do admire them and wish to emulate them in lots of different facets, then maybe take on board what they're saying, but balance it with your own nudges. And if you actually think, no, you know, where you are in your life is not where I want to be, then maybe nod along with their advice, but go your own way, because you can't get to a different place by going the way that they travelled. And again, journey, right? Very literal. Green, blue, neon. This is an echo of speaking about whoever this figure is. And again, child, pet, lover, you do you. Green, blue can be about balance and deep knowing, and neon can be about the particular urgency of a situation. Altogether, this is giving me Earth Song vibes, or like, I'm not going to get into what we all think of Michael Jackson, whether we all agree with what everyone else thinks of Michael Jackson, etc. But certainly before all of the controversy, there was a period in his career in the early 90s where he put out a lot of songs like Earth Song, Heal the World, Man in the Mirror, etc. that were about protecting children, loving kindness, being good to the planet, etc. And it's giving that without the controversy stuff. It's a very kind of... It's a caretaking energy meeting a caretaking energy. So if you're the person that's the Mando to the child, what you need to know is that the child is that to the earth, to the world. This being has a very important job to do, whether they're with us yet or not, whether they're older or younger, whether they're human or animal, they have a really key role. Whether or not you can understand it or see it, right? But they're here to put back into the earth or put back into the cosmos in some way that is really just beautiful. It's sort of choking me up a little bit, right? They are a steward in the sort of traditional, not even the Christian sense, but almost like the C.S. Lewis sense of it, for those of you who vibe with that. They are really here to restore balance and develop deep kindness and spread kindness through the world. And it's in a neon because that is an urgent thing that you need to know. That is something that's something to keep top of mind if your mind is taking over, is that this being is more important than the squabble around how to look after them. This mission is more important than whether you had doubts in the approach of it or in the rearing of a certain person or thing or relationship. It's really key. And actually all of these cards, in one way or another, associatively speak to that. Sorry, it's getting me really like... It's like the kid that's going to save the rainforest kind of energy, you know what I mean? Wowzers. Okay, let's speak a little more here about why we had Gemini. So we did talk about articulation, and sort of Gemini is about communication and language, and perhaps this is, you know, for some of you, a bilingual presence, or being that you don't speak the language of, or not in a straightforward, non-telepathic way. But also the thing that I was being urged to pay attention to with this is not the Gemini, but the mutable air. So this is words that can adapt, words that can finish, words that can destroy, words that can end, and lead us into the next part of the cycle. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sorry to those who do, mutability is a modality that we give to astrological characteristics that are moving to the next season of particular signs. So the mutable sign in each cycle of, say, spring, summer, autumn, winter will be the one that finishes it off and kind of blends into the next one. If you think of the equivalency in like colour seasons, it would be the soft summer leading into the soft autumn. They both have that softness, and one is adapting into the other, even though one is warm and one is cool, or one has brighter or lighter characteristics than another. So it's this thing of being very sure in who you are, but also having the ability to be adaptive to the next phase of a particular cycle in some way, and sharing characteristics with people or things that are nothing like you in a way that invites deep communication. And again, this sort of telepathy idea, it has a lot of different meanings, but one of them is this like universal translator energy, and particularly with Gemini. It's, I understand what you're about, even if I don't understand the words you're using, so let's work together, right? Or there is some spiritual mechanism by which we can both be on the same page, you know, the translator, and then we can align and both be ambassadors on this ship or on this planet or whatever. That is the sense I'm getting with this. It's like, whether or not you can communicate with this child or animal or person directly in a way that is satisfactory to you and indeed to everyone around you, actually you do know. Actually, I want to turn this Aquarius up in the upright. And bear in mind that Aquarius being reversed, like Aquarius would be fixed, it would be very stubborn, it knows what it's doing, right? Again, with that grandma energy. I know how to do this in a sort of air way. And the sort of, I guess the counter to that, or the next flow through, is air expressing itself through Gemini in a mutable way and being like, I don't always know, but I kind of feel my way and I have enough in common with you to get it, and I can adapt and I can lead as well, because not everyone takes the court cards this way, but I think of mutable as being to do with kings, particularly like the myths of the sleeping king under the mountain and the transition through him of an entire kingdom. It's very Odin, it's very Jesus, it's very Arthur. It's that I lead, but in a different way to cardinals, where I'm transferring the energy from one thing to another within the course of my leadership in a way that's sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes strange. No offense to my mutable sign dominants out there, but you are a weird bunch and I love it. It's very Jarmushian. It's this, I exist on the fringes of things, so I'm the thing to push it into the next phase. And that existing on the fringes may require a being in that role to have a caregiver that doesn't fully understand all the time, or a family unit or a friendship unit that doesn't fully understand all the time, because that then bestows upon them the blessing of people around me have needed me to communicate slightly differently so that we're able to understand each other, even though we're not coming from exactly the same place. Bear in mind, rose gold speaks to a group of people who were very certain of their values because they were born in a specific time, meeting or rubbing up against a group who are kind of very wavy gravy and are having to adapt in each moment to decisions made generations before. So there is again this reference of ancestral legacy, but there is also the sense of rose gold as the crown of the adaptive, right? And it is really, I mean, rose is arguably in the sort of red end of the spectrum. Gold is under yellow. So what do we get? It's kind of orangey peachy territory, and we know that orange is taking one thing and another thing and finding a middle way. Okay, let's go forward with this. 8 of coins in reverse. There has been a process of working on this which has been very arduous for you. There may have been a lot of last minute prep work, or there may have been a great deal of sacrifice in the development of the relationships that we're talking about here. This myth is the myth of the swans. I think it's German. If you want a really good, very healing interpretation of it to just passively observe, again, I take a shot every time I say it on the channel, but Jim Henson's Storyteller, the episode The Three Ravens with Miranda Richardson, is a fantastic retelling of this kind of energy. But in the traditional Germanic tale, this woman is weaving pentacles out of nettles, or in the deck she is, but in reality I think it's, she makes shirts for each of the swans of her transformed brothers, right? So they're under a curse. They've been turned into birds for one reason or another. And her magical remedy to this is to take this really harmful, abrasive plant that stings her hands to harvest and weave it into garments for the birds that they've turned into, so that in putting these garments on the swans, they become men again and they can all be reunited as a family. So there is again ancestral reunion going on here, or the making of a chosen family in spite of adverse circumstance and great sacrifice. It may have literally hurt your hands to be in this situation right now, or hurt another body part, or you may have felt that the working on this has been particularly abrasive because there is nobody to help you. If I remember rightly, this woman does this work in a tower in secret, and she has to hide the nettle shirts each time that somebody else comes in. Excuse me. That's confirmation. Yep. Could we not? Thank you. So it's this the building of this relationship, perhaps for some reason, is concealed from wider society or from specific people, or just in general out of a kind of feeling of shame to do with how it came about or something like that. And that sort of dark work done in the shadows is actually what will bring healing to this familial energy as represented by the brothers. But with the 8 being in reverse, it's like there's a stagnancy to that work. There is a resistance to it, or there's a kind of a sense of being tired of this repetitive, strenuous, sacrificial energy. There is like a parental fatigue coming through, even if you're not a parent in this. But I think that it's more to do with how this all... I want to say it's more to do with the public lens on this than it is to do with the situation itself. It's like the reason that working on this is hard is not actually your relationship to this being. It's the glare or the gaze of everybody around you. And the fact that they will say something, and the fact that they are all talking to each other in this chatty Gemini way, and the fact that you feel like you don't know what you're doing, but you weave regardless, you sacrifice regardless. You have all of the tools at your disposal to work your way out of the situation, which would be the card in the upright traditionally. Sorry, Althea. And you're feeling... It's kind of hurting my hands to do it. You're feeling resistance to it, but it will be done. There's also something here about reluctance to be helped. because with nettles, I'm reminded earlier of, I don't know how familiar you are with nettles as a plant based on where you are in the world, but here in the UK, it's kind of a traditional thing we do is if you get stung by nettles when you're out and about hiking, you find a dock leaf and you rub the dock leaf on the sting, and chemically it neutralizes the thing that makes the sting painful, right? Or you wrap it. It's like a remedy. Earlier, I was in a local nature reserve and I came across a bee, which may be significant for some of you. Again, worker, right? 8 of coins. Who was very frazzled looking and not so happy and on the floor. And I tend to, like, if they're a non-stingy kind of bee, like a bumble, I tend to try and find them whatever they need, be it, you know, some pollen on a flower or a bit of sugar water or something else that might get them flying again. Or I tend to inspect their body and see if anything's happened and put them in the right place. Bee rescue is what we call it in my family. And I was finding a dock leaf so that I could kind of prop it under this bee to lift it to see whether all of its limbs were intact, whether its wings were okay, to see what was going on as it was kind of tumbling about, because I didn't really want it to crawl on me and then sting me because it was in distress. But I felt the distress and I was like, right, what can we do here? Do you need putting somewhere? Do you need feeding something, etc.? So there's this like, there's something wanting to come in with a giant dock leaf, and it might be spirit, but you're like not getting on the leaf. And in the end with this bee, I had to just put my hand there and send energy and be like, come onto my hand, and it did, and we were fine. It didn't sting me, thank you. And I hope he's okay. But we managed to move him then to an extremely pollinated plant, and it turned out he just needed to recharge and fuel up, and he was just at the point of exhaustion on a hot sunny day, and that was kind of the remedy. But because he wouldn't get on the dock leaf, that made the problem longer. So you see where I'm going with this. It's like, we've got these archangelic neons coming in, we've got this connection between you and the stars or your intuition, you know, take whichever resonates the most, I guess. And then we've got this dock leaf from spirit that's saying, hey, I see you, climb on, follow your intuitive nudges, let me help you out, let me give you further guidance. But from your end, you're still in the nettles, you're still weaving, you're like, I can't do that now, I'm doing this. In the way that this bumblebee was very like, oh, I couldn't possibly get on that leaf, I'm going this way, even though he was like dying. Very, very visibly dying, right? And that's not to alarm you. I'm not saying you're dying. It's a very vivid example, no? So there's something here about being helped. And I feel that it's not by these influences that are in the logical mind. It's by something broader. It's by your higher self, your spirit, or God, if you choose to believe that, or something kind of that you would go to in an intuitive way, or indeed by the spirit of the very being you are caretaking. It did not pass me by, my dudes, that we've got green, blue, neon, and if you cover the neon, you've got the colour of Grogu. This is the child speaking. And I don't know how far you are into The Mandalorian if you haven't seen it, if you have seen it, sorry, but, you know, Grogu is a very key spiritual figure. He's very capable of contacting kind of the highest vibe of the Force. There's a fantastic scene in the end of season 1 where he kind of gets on a rock and starts meditating, and all these incredible magical things are happening around him because he is innately tuned in by virtue of who and what he is. And that sort of sets off a chain of events that affects everybody around him, every planet around him even. So there is this reliance upon the Force to flow through the thing that you are in a caretaking role for, be that an adult or a small one or a furry one, a scaly one, etc. Then we're moving into the Hierophant. So there is a request to commit to this. There is a nudge towards commitment. And if you have issues around being committed to that relate to this card in particular, this is an invitation from Spirit to take their dock leaf regarding that sting, right? This is like, the best thing that you can do for this situation right now is to heal this this situation without foundation that left you feeling stung and left out without a committed, stable, without a firm basis from which to care for something else. You may feel at a deep level resistance to this process because whilst you love and want to care for this being, there is a sense that you weren't cared for adequately, be that by a parent, a partner, another animal, you know, whatever it is. There's some negative experience here that's coming in to be healed, and specifically so that you develop a better relationship with commitment. And the Hierophant is also about conformity, so it may even be, oh, excuse me knees, sorry, that's the old person channeling through me again because I've been kneeling for too long. This may be that in coming to grips with ideas around commitment and what it means to be committed to, and actually how you can offer the commitment you weren't given to this, right? And that is an act of healing for you and an act of forgiveness for all of it. There's something to do with that actually will send you into the energy of whatever these people wanted you to do anyway, right? So if they're complaining that you're not adulting or you're not leveling up or you're not doing it correctly, I think actually that once this forgiveness and healing work is done, you will start to do it correctly just by following your own intuition and sort of knowing that that's what you need to do. But until this process happens of taking the sting out of the situation, I think you'll still be vacillating between the intellectual and logical versus the deep knowing and the dreaming and sort of guidance from tarot, from spirit, from your feedback in your daily life. And that can be as simple as, do you like the people you're around? Are they giving good vibes, you know? And if not, where can you put yourself that will safeguard this? There's something else here. It's Pocahontas as well. So it's like, again with the childlike energy, but just around the river bend is coming into my head. You can't see the next swerve of this, and nor are you expected to, you know, by the divine or by your higher self or anything I'm communicating with right now. You don't need to mind read the next stage of the situation, you just need to be in it. You don't need to know what this person's long-term needs are, where they're at right now, what it is that they require from a caregiver or indeed just a good friend, right? What you need to do is look into their eyes and find that you'll be fine. I know it all sounds very ephemeral, and I know that many of you will have an internal fight going on right now where it's like, we can't just wing it. That's not how you do good parenting. My parents were awful because they were just winging it, or so-and-so's parents, or you can't just like coast in a relationship. That's how you guys break up. Blah, blah, blah. Fight that impulse, because that's coming from the Saturn that we've reversed. It's asking you to spend more time. It's in retrograde, right? It's a sign ruled by both Uranus and Saturn in a backwards sense, in a backwards representation of the card. You need to meditate, if you are astrologically inclined, on Saturn, on fatherhood, on Uranus, on revolution, on destruction as a form of change, right? All these things are really important to get to grips with right now. Even if this situation is, I don't know what to feed my goldfish. And bless you for staying this far into the reading if it is that, but it's still relevant, right? It's still that dynamic. Don't become that person that overwrites your own nudges and your own calling even because of the surface guidance of others who may not actually know better, but just really want to speak in an informed way. Okay, King of Coins. And weren't we just talking about daddy energy, right? This isn't the myth attached, but when I look at this card, I think of Morla in the Never-Ending Story. So I'm just going to sit with that for a minute because we are in childlike mode, and I'm going to ask what that's about. Yeah, again, right. So, sorry again if you haven't seen the Never-Ending Story, but you probably haven't lived. When Atreyu goes to Morla, firstly, it's in like a swampy, boggy, like emotionally drenched state, right? And we see later with Artax in the Swamps of Sadness that it can sink a person ruminating on all this stuff, or like analysing self-worth to that point. And Atreyu's movement through swamps, through bogs, through deep, thick mud is emphasised both in the films and the books as a kind of like trudging through grief energy that Bastian, as the reader of the story, has to also come to grips with, having lost a parent. So for some of you, this will resonate as something to do with bereavement as well, and like how that has affected the instruction you take from others, and indeed how you relate to caregiving or investing love in a person or a being, knowing that love can be lost. That's a whole other thing, right? But hit me up in the comments if it's you. So there's this trudging energy, and he finally gets to Morla, and then he asks her about the next stage of his quest. And it seems like all she can do is offer cryptic log lady bullshit and sneeze a lot and be incredibly frustrating. I think that this might speak to your connection either with spirit or with like tapping into your own inner guidance. It may be like a bit of a, not dicey, what's the word, guys? It's a complicated process, right? It's sometimes fantastic. It's sometimes unpredictably not great. And you may not always trust yourself, is what I'm getting. And again, we spoke about hypervigilance and developing trust in the self and not being kind of gaslit by the way other people live in the collective narrative versus what you know to be true to your values, or true in an objective way, right? Because the cultural paradigm may not be anything like what the actual truth is. So there's some coming to grips with that in a way that is frustrating, or there's some tapping into intuition or trusting in the self in some way that makes you feel like Atreyu in the tree, being sneezed upon by a giant tortoise, told what to do in the most cryptic way imaginable, told that he's going to save a world that he doesn't even really know how to navigate from this point, and just getting super frustrated with the whole process, right? And when you go back and watch that movie, she is giving him the right advice, but she's giving it in a way that might be a bit ancient, or it might be, again, in a different kind of a language than he's used to. And to hit on the astrology stuff, you know, we're always taught in class, astrology is a language. It's learning another language. It's just as complex and nuanced as, like, I don't know, learning Japanese. And it's more maligned than that, and it's more culturally misused than that in kind of pop astrology and sun sign stuff. TikTok, you know, etc. But there was stuff before TikTok that did the same thing. But actually, when you can speak that language and anticipate both archetypal movement and sidereal movement, you have married the logic brain and the spirit, and you have come across a new way of communicating about both in a very concise way, which is why, even though I'm not yet certificated, I do use a lot of astrological language on this channel, because it's a good mode of reference. It's a good way of saying a great deal of things with just one word. And there's something about that you haven't fully learnt this language of tapping into the self, or you feel unsteady on your feet, or you feel like the absolute worst time to learn an extra language is when you've got a baby in your arms, or a cat that needs feeding, or a relationship that needs tending to, or whatever it may be. But this is saying, actually, King of Coins, you are more than capable of doing this. Gender free, you are the daddy in this situation, right? You know what to do. There is a tree growing out of Morla even as she speaks, right? she is setting the foundation for the land to be restored, again with this green-blue vibe. So I don't know whether, like, if this is a literal child, there may be some, like, ecological advocate when they get older or so. It's very, like, it's given a lot of that. But if not, it's just this thing of there will be something fresh and new growing from this foundation that's being set right here, right now. And you may even look back on it with some amusement, some fondness, right? For many, that sequence is one of our favourites because it's quite funny. But it's not funny for Atreyu when he's inside it. Quite the opposite. It's really distressing. And he does kind of learn that language a little bit better, but what he needs, again, is a third thing coming in, represented by Bastian, right? Which arguably is both the dock leaf in this situation and the child being looked after. Because again, the whole of the book, and more in the book than the film actually, The Never-Ending Story, is about Bastian's journey through grief and through parental neglect, because there is a parent who can't process their own grief, and it's all very sad. He is restoring a land of fantasy which is being overtaken by apathy in the form of the nothing, which is being swept through by depression. So it may be that either the job of this figure is to restore that hope, that fantasy, that optimism, that childlike joy, or that in taking care of this figure, you are restoring the care about Fantasia before it gets taken by the nothing, before it gets swept over by the apathy of the current collective media narrative, of the current comp-het nuclear family narrative, of the way to do things correctly that is being championed up here. I think you're here to heal the heart in the same way that this being is here to kind of restore the land, you know, or the environment. Ace of Wands in reverse. Again, there's difficulty here. You may not feel creative, you may not feel giving, you may not feel like you can express yourself. For some of you, this is like speaking to a sort of delayed or slightly stunted relationship to divination, to tarot, to magic, to spirit contact, that is coming in as an affect of this overall relationship related to something else, right? And you're feeling the loss of that because it was such a big part of you, or it was something you aspired to so deeply. Maybe you've had a literal child and had to stop practice in some of the things that you were doing because you don't want to bring spirit work into the environment in a way that might endanger a very sort of innocent and at this time fragile being. Or maybe it's that in having an unexpected relationship to caretaking something, you've had to give up on doing that, or you don't have time, or you don't feel the creative inclination that you need to feel as a magician or as an artist or even as a lover, right? Because for some of you, confirmation, you are in a stable relationship, but there is some aspect of caregiving that is detracting from that, taking the joy out of it, taking the fire, the passion out, maybe prohibiting sex, maybe restricting you from spending time together as a sort of triplicate, because you'll notice there isn't like much 3 in here if that's the case. But there's something here about feeling blocked more generally, just feeling like you're not yourself, feeling like your energy, your ability to seed ideas out there in the world, your big dick energy, your painter energy as well, is being obstructed by all of this and by stuff weighing in and by you feeling like you don't know how to do it. And it's like this lack of capability is kind of your worst enemy in this. But simultaneously, this is kind of the last card, so this is an outcome thing, to say that these things are not stopped, they're not prohibited, they're suspended. And in relationship to this, and notice that they've come out together, right? They're stacked. Remember we spoke about sacrifice here and about that kind of Odinic, hanged man, very Piscean energy. I think that this is a literal reference within tarot to suspension and therefore to the hanged man, right? Or suspension in even more a literal sense, but you do you. But there's something here about leaving a situation hanging for long enough that it becomes a sacrifice which takes us to the next stage, and then we can go even bigger, even harder, even more, right? So in having this thing where you feel a bit blocked, you feel a bit obstructed, you feel a bit unsure, incapable, you can't trust in yourself quite yet, you are being prevented from doing another thing which actually is best left in suspension so that it can be bigger and better when the timing is correct. I hope that makes sense to you. We're going to go into the next stage of the reading now. Okay, so firstly, if you haven't explored the channel, please do. I have a playlist of an A to Z lucky dip where we have an envelope each time and we do a pick a pile of 3 possible readings, and we pick a word out of the envelope that I can't see and you can't see, beginning with a certain letter for each, A is for, B is for, and then we do a reading on whatever word comes out with the VAV Marseille, or, it will be a sequential thing with other decks as well. So if you want to go to that playlist and check out your favourite letter or one of those readings and you feel drawn to that, this is a nod to that, because what I was pulled to use for my extra other spicy divination technique first is the words that we've already covered in readings there. So I'm just going to let some fall through my hands, and based on where they scatter, we'll get a general energy. Blimey, that's a lot, guys. And then I'm also going to do a bit of incense gazing as my kind of second bit of scrying for this. Objection exposed. Finer things in life. I don't even remember doing these readings, guys. They were all such a long time ago. Ghosted. Begging. Mirror. Delay. Revenge. Responsibility, and finances, which I'm going to put somewhere around here. So any of those words might jump out to you in a particular way and might even relate to the 2 cards they're placed on. And what am I getting from this before I begin with the incense? This may be directly related to finances in some way, and that may be confirmation. You feel like you've been exposed begging for financial support within the situation, particularly if it involves a literal child, right? You may have had to go to seek help from other people that you would rather weren't as in your business as they would have to be if they offered that help. Revenge may be this feeling that if you do go to them for this extra help, if you do say, hey, I'm struggling a little bit here, I don't know how to do this, you might feel that there's like an element of revenge in their communications then, that they're kind of teaching you how to be, almost as a backlash, as a like, I told you so, to the fact that you've had to go to them. And that may be such a resistance for you that you don't want to go to them. So where do we stand on that in the other words? Yeah, we've got it coming up with responsibility and with mirror. So I actually think if you were in 2 minds as to whether to go to these people for financial assistance based on the situation being described, there is an awareness here, and this is jumping out again, of like the higher responsibility you have to this being or creature, being more important than kind of, for some of you, I want to say the egoic injury, and then for others of you, I want to say the genuine abuse that's going to come out of asking specific people for their help and having them tell you, of course I'll help you, but do you realise it's because you're incompetent or it's because you fucked up in some way, right? Which I want to say isn't true from all the energy in this reading. It's actually really lovely coming through as you and this being really bonding. But it's almost as if like that bond is a secreted thing by itself and you don't want it exposing. So you will downplay it, or you will like not mention aspects of it in order to keep the child safe And these are smugglers. So in order to smuggle the child, in order to have this situation grow unseen in your life, and develop further without this like pressure, but it is in fact you're holding back on the info on that that's like aggravating these people, because they want to know more and they want to get into it more with you, of like, I need more details about how you're doing it so I can tell you you're doing it wrong. Does that make sense? But with mirror coming up, it's almost like going back to this lesson about what are these people in your life to teach you as soulmates. Like, yeah, okay, what are we learning from this in terms of our mirror work? I'm going to pop these on here because they've been kind of covered. Begging and finances. So what have we got left? We've got objection, finer things in life, ghosted, and delay. For those who are looking for a more romantic reading and sort of resonate with this being somebody that you'd like to give to, but that isn't kind of under your care as a guardianship, this person may want the finer things in life, and that may be something you feel at the moment that you can't give them. You're not yet in this King of Pentacles, but you will be. The reading is reassuring you that this is something you can step into. And again, when I look into your eyes, I realize that I'll be fine. I find that I'll be fine. So there is something here about, like, if you've been delaying on this, or even if you've ghosted this person, the solution is actually to enter in before you feel you're ready. And I don't mean that in the sense of showing up with bugger all to offer them, but I mean that if you can't offer them the finest things to kind of make up for lost time, or to reciprocate their energy and offer this like deep, intimate flow and trust between you, what's required isn't for you to level up financially, stability-wise, I want to say like statistically. What's required isn't for you to meet the sort of adulting thing that these millennials are upset about, or even to meet the criteria of family and friends. What's required is meeting their eyes, meeting the knowledge of what to do next by virtue of being in the same room and just going, cards on the table, I don't know how to do this, but I want to be here for you. I think it's really kind of as simple as that, if that is your situation. I know it won't be for everyone, but there's something here, and it is, you know, when I speak to people who are biological parents, and I do quite frequently at the minute, there is something here about innately knowing how to care for somebody once you're in that role, once you do meet the gaze of a child, once you do watch them falling asleep. And that may be too complex and may make some of you gag at the screen, but it's that thing of like, when I'm in the room with you, I will know the vibe and I will know what to do. It's the thing of being a Treo and going to Mola and going through the process of frustration of, I don't know what you mean by this, right? Translating the crying, translating the literal different language into just, listen, I'm showing up for you because it's my responsibility to, because I feel love for you and I feel love coming from you and I know you're important. And letting that moment of intimacy and vulnerability be the thing to tell you what's next. Even if it doesn't happen within a few seconds, even if you go home frustrated, even if you feel like, oh, I don't know whether that was a terrible mistake, there's some unfolding that needs to happen that's catalyzed by just being present one-on-one with this child, right? And not with all of your thoughts, not with all the stuff you're being told. Let's go into incense reading. Dennis, if you kindly would. This is Dennis, my arc lighter, so called because he is a lodge denizen, got a light. And he's going to light this wonderful incense, which we're going to offer to whatever it is that is giving you this dock leaf of relief in this situation, that's trying to rescue you, albeit in an awkward way. So any energy, prayers, intentions for this being or for yourself, or indeed for the cosmos that you want to put into this, please do. Through the screen, may the force be with you, and I'm going to watch the smoke from it and figure some stuff out. we just made a loop that kind of went back on itself. So there is this repetition energy that's also expressed with the 8 of coins. But what else about that? Right, there is a looping pattern in caregiving, generosity to others, ancestral patterning, etc. That you, I don't want to say you need to break it, but you need to see it, right? Because that was the first thing I saw. So if it is family giving you this like well-intended but absolutely critical advice, notice what their pattern is that they share with their family and their family and their family, going back as far as you know. And if you are adopted, that will go for whoever your caregivers were or whoever you resonated the most with in terms of things like foster care. Like whoever you think was the most parental to you, what was their pattern? Was it positive or negative? What brought it about? When did it repeat, right? It's just a matter of sitting with it and observing it for now. And again, I want to say that because we've got Saturn in reverse and then we've got a King of Pence and 2 masculine figures, this may well relate to the masculine. Okay, they formed horns then, and I'm seeing betwixt the horns. So some of you are tradcraft practitioners, but also this is speaking about the open space denoting the mystical between certain fixed things. So again, the mutable between the fixed and the next cycle, or the kind of, for you magicians, it's like the gnosis between fixed empirical facts. That's where you need to be dwelling, right? And you kind of can't do that in critical analysis of my actions head. Okay, give me something new and fresh, guys. I'm being told I'm going to get a letter. Bear with me. You may be getting a letter, right? Something in the post is on its way that is significant to this. Or you need to send a letter for some of you, but for most of you are getting one. So that may apply if, you know, finances or bills or whatever are a worry. It's like, act once you've had this letter, because it will make things clearer. But there is a literal letter of the alphabet here as well. W, okay. So the letter W, this could be a family name, or it could be, now I'm hearing DJ Khaled going, all we do is win. It could be W for win. As in like, you're going to win in this situation. But also that song makes me think of like being silly with someone, because it's a thing that I like say with a friend and it's ridiculous and we both kind of hate the song but love it at the same time. So there's this like, there's the affirmation of connection. And again, it's like the affirming of this bond, but also it may indicate, who are you silly with? Who are you silly around? Who is your friend that you can just be like, all we do is win, and they'll get it. And they'll not be critical of like, why are you saying a strange thing? Or I haven't heard that song or whatever. They'll just be like, yeah, and then I do something weird. Like, because W is weird as well, right? It's like, who can you be strange around? Who can you just have fun with? Who do you clown about with? Because actually, if you're stepping into this intuition mode, they may not be like a likely co-parenting figure, but they are something really key to this dynamic. They may be a good influence to have around in terms of tapping in to your own sense of what's going on, or even just tapping back into your creative self and your own identity away from what you feel you should be, which enables you then to connect on a deeper level with this being and assess its needs on the intuitive rather than the instructed. And I'm hearing I have spoken, which is again like another Mando reference and another like potential comedic character vibe, but it's also like, yes, we agree with this. Spirit is, yeah. What next? Again, I said what's next. and I had just around the river bend, and I had the smoke turning in a different direction, sort of instructing me that I can't really know what's next, and that's the wrong question if you've been asking it. It's not what's next, it's what's now. That was it. Again, as I look in your eyes, I find that I am fine. I'm really sorry I keep repeating it, but it's such a, like, it really was the channel of the moment, wasn't it? It expresses so much. Because the other thing with that song is that it's about that reciprocal love between you. You can't emulate that level of intimacy with somebody that you don't have a soul connection with. You can't look into their eyes and just know stuff. You may look into their eyes and be fascinated. You may look into their eyes and feel love. But unless it's that particular sort of bordering on telepathic bond, you can't look into their eyes and know the way to go or know exactly what they're thinking in the same fashion. There are people that you have to learn, and that is its own form of intimacy. And then there are people that you just know. And you may only have, met them a few times, or it may have been a sort of wildly unintimate context, and yet you look in their eyes and the exchange is there of where both of you are going and what's next and what's now. So it is this thing of like, be in the moment, look into their eyes and just know, just be present. Eckhart Tolle may be relevant for some of you. I sometimes resonate with him, sometimes find him a bit aggravating for ableism reasons, but again, that sort of power is now, that capability of taking back the present moment, particularly in relationship to something which may make you feel vulnerable. And notice as well that the smoke is only taking on certain things now via the insertion of my hand. So it's again like, you have to take part in this to know what the next step is. It's no good just asking me, right? And that's not a dig, because I'm glad you're here. Please like, subscribe, ding the dog, thank you kindly. It's more that like, in this whole thing, you can't just take the advice and analytically go forward and not be in the moment with it and expect it to turn out. You have to be there. You have to insert yourself into the situation and just pick up on what's going on in the present. And those of you who are parents, you will know, step parents or otherwise, you can't be in that future thinking space around a child. You just can't, because if you spend too long ruminating either on the past or the future, you look back and they'll have drawn up the wall, or they'll have vomited, or they'll have peed on something, or they'll be climbing something and going, look how high I can get. And it's like, oh no, I need to deal with this, because they are constantly in the present. They're constantly exploring. And that's what we love about kids, right? But it's also like the requirement for anybody looking after any other personal thing is like, okay, respond to it here and now. Because my feeling is, my dude, that that's not what you've been doing. You've been like planning several stages ahead, or looking to everybody else's past for context, or your own past. And there needs to be a mixture of things here. Yes, this sacrificial, diligent energy is very good of you. Yes, this focus on forgiveness and ancestral work is fantastic in this context. But really, the overall thing of this reading is go to the being. Stand in front of the being, or sit with it, look into its eyes, realise that you'll be fine, and then go forward from that point with whatever it feels correct to do, because you do know in the end. I think that part of this being's contract with you specifically is to teach you about trust, whether or not they have a broader mission in the world, whether or not you do. And I think that this is a level of trust that you could only learn by, I'm hearing, having your charge, as in like in the old school sense of the word, in the sort of the knight and the knight's charge, as in like, this thing is under your care. And if you fuck up, you really fuck up. So you're not just learning trust in a hypothetical relationship Broadway that's like, you can do convenient evasive freeze response things to get away from it, right? To ignore the situation. You're learning trust in a situation that has thrown you in at the deep end with something that absolutely needs you to trust in yourself in every moment of the present moment. And that is how you learn to do that. By being there. By being here now. And that's all I want to say. You can do it, right? But you have to respond from second to second. You can't be doing I mean, it's great to have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, particularly around a child or similar, right? But that won't actually feed the baby now. It won't give the injured animal the love now. It won't fix the relationship now. Again, when I look on your eyes, I find that I will be fine. Please like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want similar on anything. Check out the A to Z Lucky Dip readings if you feel drawn to readings based around these kinds of themes. There's a whole unused pile here of stuff we've done so far over a couple of years being on here very intermittently. If you want to help me out, please do share with a friend, pass me on, There's also a donation button down below, but it's not, you don't have to, right? I understand many of you are not in a position to, and that's cool too. But please leave a like if you don't leave any money, because this is my main income, and I would like to get bigger in a digital way so that I don't have to do as many in-person readings as a disabled individual. Also, if you did want to book privately with me, that is absolutely possible. I'm going to give you some info here that other people on other readings aren't getting at the moment. If you go to my subscriber update, there's a link in there for a little bit, a smidgeroony off, just for the time being, for anybody who is struggling with finances at this point, if you're seeing this live. And I feel called to say that particularly for this group, because if you do have something under your care that requires your financial commitment, I know that booking with a tarot reader for anything more specific is going to be a little bit more difficult. So do think about that. It's a possibility that you can book with me and receive it later, or you can do my normal 7 to 10 working days process, which frankly is usually a lot quicker than that. It's usually a couple of days. But do have a think about that and doing it on discount if you are seeing this when it airs. And really, I want to say, just trust yourself, right? Whether or not I ever see you again, whether you return to my channel, whether you leave your gratitude or not, my blessings are with you. It sounds like this being's blessings are with you. And I really hope that you're able to embody the moment and know that you do know what to do. It's just that you've been around some very confusing messaging, and the time is now to step into your power. Take care.